Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, as you might have noticed, the last few episodes we've been having a lot of guests on, been doing more interviews, and slacking a little bit in the news and notes department. So we're going to get you caught up on some stuff you might have already heard, but maybe some things that you haven't heard because maybe your head's been buried in football and other areas. And of course, right now, the MLB is still locked down, but both sides are beginning to talk, so there is a little dialogue there, but it still seems like we're kind of far away from getting a deal. But we'll just get you caught up with that, what the latest rumors are with that, as well as just go through some news and notes in terms of some players passing, one from the Yankee family, one in baseball in general. And of course, now with minor league players who can start training and start using the facility since they're not really on the major league roster. But will they be stocking shelves at Home Depot soon? We'll get into all of it. And as I mentioned earlier, baseball is still locked out. The players' union and the owners are still trying to come together on a collective bargaining agreement. And Commissioner Rob Manfred is just kind of blowing the wind a little bit. Seems like there is now some structure put in place, but far away again where they can have an agreement and start spring training and hopefully start the season on time. Basically, it seems like two of the big holdups. One is the minimum salary. Obviously the players want a little bit more, the owners want to pay a little bit less, as well as a little back and forth on the luxury tax. Yeah, again, I figured this would be solved a while ago, but it seems they're really taking this, to the 11th hour, and it's kind of get a little scared because usually around this time of the month is when pitchers and catchers are ready to report it to camp, and some of the position players sometimes come a little early just to get a training in, get a workout in. Well, again, none of that's really happening until these two sides can come to an agreement, and for pitchers, as we know, they're creatures of habit, they have their routines. If they don't get the proper spring training, stretching out and working out what they're used to, regiment, that could possibly have some impact on the regular season. It could be an injury situation, or it could be pitchers just getting maybe fatigued early in the season or late in the season, getting dead arm, again, because they're kind of going against what they've been doing their whole career. So it's getting a little scary, and just cut you really with spring training games usually starting right around the corner in early March, you'd really want to hope that everyone's on board, stretched out, and ready to go. Now, Commissioner Rob Manfred, he states that he feels confident that by early March this will be done and then spring training can start on time. But they're really taking it, it's really getting nail-biting here. And you just hope that, again, that pitchers can, and as well as position players, can get their normal work in so they're healthy for spring training. Now, the good thing about spring training is that, for the most part, the games themselves are more for the pitchers to get stretched out. Position players are like midway in March, they're done. They just want to go back up north and start playing the real game. So even if spring training is shortened a little bit, it's not the end of the world. It's really more affects the pitchers more because, again, they need to get their arms up to speed. And again, with pitchers, look at the Mets spent on Matt Scherzer, 3 years, over $100 million. Again, you're paying a lot of money to the pitchers. You just want to make sure they can get to the normal routines and they're healthy to start the season. Now, some little good news that maybe most fans will like, maybe some National League fans won't like, is that Rob Manfred did hint that if and when we do get the season underway in 2022, we will see the universal DH, which, if you may recall, we had in 2020 in the shortened COVID season, which at the time you understood this because, it was such a short season and, the pitchers really, you didn't want the pitchers exposed and too many people in the field like that, so they kind of wanted to limit the amount of players, so they figured, let's do the universal DH just for the season. Then now that was 2020. Now they're bringing it back full-time for a full season 2022. Again, Rob Manfred said that's one of the things that both sides have agreed on. So it seems that will be the case when the season gets underway. And as I mentioned before, a lot of maybe National League purists may not like that. Again, they just like the idea of the pitcher hitting. They like the strategy involved, the double switching. Kind of the sort of, I guess you would say, makes the manager think a little bit more. Even though a lot of these managers are kind of the GM is pretty much running all the stuff up upstairs anyway. But nevertheless, I think most fans want it. They like the offense, and I think overall it's good for baseball. It's just going to lead to more run production. It probably makes the games a little more exciting. It's going to help with obviously with ratings. I just think people want to see home runs and offense. It's just the way it is. Once in a while, a good pitching duel, but again, people respond more to more offense. It's just the way it is. Just looking back at '98, we have all the home runs and going left and right, and that kind of brought baseball back. And for the players, it's an opportunity for some older players to stick around the game a little bit more. Now, you might say, well, it's cheesing it a little bit to pad your stats. But look, it gives an opportunity for someone to make maybe an extra $20 million to hang around the game for 3 more years. So the player union's going to love that. And it also, protects pitchers as well. Because, look, let's just face it, for the most part, most of all these pitches now are automatic outs. And it's like some of these games are even tough to watch, especially when like an American League team has to play at a National League ballpark. And you have a pitcher like now with the Yankees with Tanaka, they just basically told him don't swing. And he would just sit there and either take a walk or get struck out. So it's almost like so you know what, it's almost a waste of a spot. So you know what, to make it fair for both sides, I think the DH does help in that regard. And again, someone like a pitcher, again, just going back to Max Scherzer with the Mets, look at the money they invested in him. In fact, look at the money they invested in Cole. And you would just not want your pitcher to go up there and get hit or run the base and break an ankle. I remember Chim-Ming Wong with the Yankees had a start to a great career, broke the ankle, never the same again, and his whole career got was washed out. So. It's good for a lot of reasons. I think the players are going to like it. I think the fans like it. Again, you might have some of those old school National League purists who like, hey, that's our game. Keep it in the American League. But it's just the way it was trending. It was going to happen at some point. And I guess, it doesn't hurt just to try full season, see how it goes. And maybe people that are against it now, maybe it'll change their minds. Or if it just turns out that it just is not good for the game at all, you can always switch it back. But for 2022, no problem giving it a shot. Now, in the previous episode with Rocco Constantino, we discussed Hall of Fame a little bit. It's been a bit, about almost a few weeks ago, it already happened, but I never really, really fully broke it down for you. So as we all know, Big Papi David Ortiz gets in first ballot Hall of Famer, getting 77% and change of the vote. And again, as you may recall, that again, you have to get at least 75% of the vote in order to qualify. So he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, of course not unanimous, but still getting in on the first ballot. And of course, now the interesting part of this is that this was also A-Rod's first year of eligibility, and of course he didn't even get close to that. He ended up like around 34%. So people are saying, well, why are you letting Big Papi in and not A-Rod when supposedly back in 2003 there was a test that went around baseball and they supposedly both flunked it. Now, A-Rod, again, in addition to that, he's had some other issues. He had the whole biogenesis thing where, again, he had to lose a whole season and change. And actually, it was Derek Jeter's final season, if you may recall. So there's been more allegations and stuff with A-Rod beyond the 2003 situation. And as Rocco pointed out, he mentioned that possibly that 2003 situation, for not just A-Rod, but Ortiz and some other players, there could have been a lot of false positives. So unless we have some really thing concrete at the time, you really can't hold Big Papi to it. So I guess that's just why the baseball writers put him in and punished A-Rod. But you got to understand why a lot of fans are upset, because it's like a little bit of a double standard. I mean, there's been other players, even though it's never been proven, but you can hear a little bit whispers with maybe Piazza. Well, he got in, and so, but there's been whispers, and if you look at this Ortiz, not only the 2003 thing, and again, this is all speculation, but just look at the fact that he spent those first few years with the Minnesota Twins, nothing surprising, and all of a sudden he comes, 2003, comes to the Boston Red Sox, and he's like Babe Ruth, and of course with Manny Ramirez hitting behind him, it's like basically Ruth Gehrig 2.0. Again, that's just, again, none of that's concrete evidence, all speculation, but, where was that player in Minnesota? All of a sudden he comes to Boston, he's just this all-world player, but it is what it is, and we've seen a lot of stuff, weird stuff with Ortiz, towards the end of his career. He had that one point, I was like, almost like he was batting like 150 at one point. He couldn't even walk and move anymore. Then all of a sudden the year after that he was just great again. So a lot of peaks and valleys, a lot of weird stuff. But you look at his career. But look, he's got the stats, he's got the numbers. He's got over 500 home runs, and of course part of 3 World Championship Boston Red Sox team. And of course we all know the 2004 slaying of the Dragons, part of that team that came back from 3-0 against the Yankees, upset the Yankees, slayed the Dragon, and then went on to sweep the St. Louis Cardinals. And to to bring a championship to Boston for the first time in 86 years. And of course he's just the face of the whole franchise there, and we know the whole thing after the Boston bombing, and he kind of came on the field and pumped up the crowd and all that stuff. And again, just seeing people just like him overall more than A-Rod, and that was always going to be the case. But still, there are some whispers around him. So for him to get in on the first ballot, people just feel like, it's a little bit of a double standard, because you take A-Rod and you take some other players who, without on their last year of eligibility, mainly Barry Bonds, who finished around 66% of the vote, Roger Clemens, 65% of the vote, and then, of course, Sammy Sosa, he really bottomed out at 18. Never that you would think, because Sosa was like one of those people that clearly a result of PEDs, where, the argument always with Bonds and Clemens again over and over again is that, they were great players. They probably dabbled in with it, but even before they started doing that, they were probably Hall of Famers already. But again, it's a bit of a double standard to keep Clemens out, to keep out Bonds, and to keep out A-Rod, but you let Ortiz in when, again, there's plenty. First of all, you had the 2003 flunk test, and just a lot of stuff around him in terms of his early years with the Twins were nothing, and you just look towards the end of Ortiz's career. He did have a lot of seasons where he peaked and valleyed a little bit, where it's just, why are you inconsistent like that? So, it would make you scratch your head, and maybe at some point Ortiz would have get in, but to get him in on the first ballot when you're holding all these other players out, again, it's a bit of a double standard there. Now, I don't think Yankee fans are outraged over it because, a lot of Yankee fans just don't like A-Rod. Now, some do, some don't. So I don't think it's a situation where you just see, people really upset about, hey, you let this Red Sox in, but you kept the Yankee guy out. Again, people just never saw A-Rod as a real Yankee, like a Derek Jeter or Don Mattingly or, Bernie Williams or something like that. So it wasn't too much backlash, and people aren't really shocked now. Look, A-Rod has plenty, another 10 years or so to maybe collect some more votes, and we'll see what happens. I'm at the starter for 34. That's pretty low, so that's a pretty bad indication. Let's just say he started off at like 60%. You can say, all right, you know what? He's got 10 years to try to get to 75, which could be possible. But you're starting very low at 34%. So we'll see what happens, but a good chance he doesn't get into the game, and it would be a shame because you're talking about one of the dominant all-time great players of his era, multiple-time MVP, Gold Glove winner, over 600 home runs, the one world championship with the Yankees. So there's enough there, and he, besides, he has some off-the-field issues like that. It just seems like he's a real student of the game. He loves the game. Again, he's currently doing, some play-by-play for ESPN right now, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it'd just be a shame to keep him out, but that just seems the way it's going to be. And same thing with former, Yankee Roger Clemens. I mean, everything with him has really just been on hearsay. I mean, it's been mentioned in the Mitchell report, but never really caught him with anything cold-handed other than the supposed, B12 vitamin shots that, whatever one of his trainers said he used to inject him in. But again, never really caught him cold-handedly with anything. But again, speculation was enough to keep him out. But unfortunately, or, fortunately for Ortiz, for him, Red Sox fans, speculation was able to keep him out. And if you want to look at some other players that were in the last year eligibility, I did mention Sammy Sosa. So he's had his 10-year run, and now he can't make it, so he's gone. As well as Curt Schilling, who, you look at his stats, and it's kind of interesting, regular season wise, I guess he does have a Cy Young award, a couple of 20-game winning seasons, but it really took him a long time to really get his career off the ground, getting originally from the Baltimore Orioles organization, spent a few years with the Phillies, kind of up and down a little consistency, probably almost became a Yankee a few times in some trade proposals that just never worked out, then ultimately went to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and this became this worldly pitcher, and then of course, as we know what he did with the 2004 Red Sox and more on getting a couple championships with the 04 team, the 07 team, and of course we all know the whole deal with the Bloody Sox. So I mean, you look at Schilling's postseason resume, it kind of helped, would make a little bit of a case for him, but unfortunately he finished in the 50s, and that's his last year of eligibility. And of course, with Schilling, as you know, politically he's been making some statements that have been rubbing people the wrong way, so not really helping himself out, and he doesn't really seem to care less either way. So he lost his opportunity. And another interesting, just a little note with in Yankee land, Mark Teixeira, he was also eligible, but he only got like a measly, a little over 1% of the vote. So unfortunately, you have to at least have 5% of the votes to at least stay on the ticket for the next year. Well, he fell well under 5%, so he's got his one shot and he lost it. So obviously, he'll never probably have a shot. And again, you would never think of Teixeira as a Hall of Fame player. Very good player. Career was cut a little short, a little bit unfortunate. Now, if he was able to maybe play out a little bit more as a Yankee contract, could have been shot because, again, he's kind of that rare breed of a switch hitter, a la Mickey Mantle, a la Eddie Murphy, putting up some great numbers. But, again, he had a lot of little nagging injuries and just lost a lot of time towards the end of the year. And he's a player where you look at that in terms of the shift. Once they introduced the shift, 2010, 2011, drastically brought down his batting average. I mean, he used to be like a 300 type hitter. He bottomed down to like 230, 240 just from the shift, and really unfortunate because he's really a 300 hitter. But this goes to show you play in the times you're in. Could be a different story. For example, let's say Teixeira played in the 80s when they didn't have the shift as much. He probably would have a much career higher batting average, and could be a different story. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. But there could possibly be some light at the end of the tunnel for players like Clemens and Bonds or even A-Rod someday. There is the Veterans Committee. They can also vote players into the Hall of Fame now. The normal Hall of Fame is voted, of course, by the Baseball Writers Association of America. So they're the ones that kind of determine the most recent voting, if you want that. But there is an opportunity where this Veterans Committee does have an opportunity to look back at opportunities of players that were missed for various reasons and vote them in. So this committee usually made up about 16 people. It's a kind of a mix, some Hall of Fame players, some baseball writers themselves, as well as some former baseball executives kind of formed this 16-person group, and they're able to decide on players, to pick players to come in. And as again, remember a couple of seasons ago, a little bit of a riff of voting in Harold Baines, who again, just a glorified DH, a good player, but not someone you look at as a Hall of Fame player. But again, this committee does have an opportunity to get players elected into Cooperstown. So maybe, again, once this all subsides, this committee would go back and look and maybe vote in a Clemens or a Bonds. Now, who knows how many years that's going to take. And even, just on the side note, even Kyle Ripken kind of made a comment not too long ago that this committee so far, kind of missed the ball, but they should have, put in Don Mattingly. Again, you could put up a debate whether he's a Hall of Famer or not. Again, some people say yes, some people no. So, but again, this committee does have the power. So, again, not the end of the world for Bonds and Clemens, who, again, I think deserve to be in, but they still may have to wait a long time, and, they just might be in a wheelchair before they finally, let them in. And behind the mic for the Yankees, specifically on the Yes Network, we're going to see a familiar face in Carlos Beltran. So he's going to join the Yes Network team to call about 36 games throughout the season. And I remember the last time we heard of Beltran, he was going to be the Mets manager, but then everything came out with the Houston Astros little garbage can banging scheme where supposedly Beltran was like the designer of this whole thing. Again, this goes back to 2017 where they were stealing signs and then banging the garbage can if the pitcher is going to throw a strike or a breaking pitch like that. And again, it all came out through testimony that supposedly Beltran's the one who put this all together. And this because of that, the Mets had he had to resign / Mets fired him, whatever. And, so that situation went out with him. And then since then, Beltran's has kind of been on the side a little bit. You heard some rumors that maybe some other teams would consider him for, a manager. But of course, once the Astros thing was out there, put the kibosh to the Mets, and I guess no one really wanted to touch him. So I guess, good situation for him where he may, come into the Yes booth, make a few bucks. It's just kind of interesting that, that 2017 Astros team kind of knocked the Yankees out of the playoffs and kind of put a dash on their World Series goals, and so it's like kind of weird, like this guy that designed the cheating system that knocked you out of the playoffs, perhaps, maybe, we're not too sure, but probably did, and now he's going to join the Yes team. So a little interesting. Of course, as you know, Beltran had a stint with the Yankees for a couple of seasons. It was pretty decent, even though he was in his late 30s at the time, but ultimately in 2016, when they kind of got rid of all the older players and kind of went with the baby bombers and kind of revamped the team, he was traded off. He was sent packing. So, but his couple of seasons with the Yankees, he was rather good, and it's just gets to be interesting to see him in the booth. Again, the Mets thought he was good enough to be a manager, and a lot of people say he does have a high baseball acumen, and it's a lot of people around baseball do like him. So I guess he can just bring some of those skills to the Yes booth, and maybe it'll get him a job in the future. Just similar with Buck Showalter and the Yankees. Buck parted ways with the Baltimore Orioles, so the Yankees had him on Yes a little bit, put his face out there a little bit, and it probably one of the reasons why caught Steve Cohen's attention to the hire him as a Mets manager. So we'll see how it goes. But of course, most of the Yankee crew is still going to be there. You're still going to see David Cone for roughly about 55 games. But little update there, he's also going to join the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball team, as well as some other Yankee people are going to be there. Michael Kay as well. He's going to team up with A-Rod, the same right now, about 12 games there. So again, some of these, I guess everyone's just watching the Yes Network with all the evidence. Hey, let's steal these guys. But it's going to happen though. Of course, once the Yankee games are going to be on Sunday Night Baseball, people are like, oh, these guys are homers. They're pulling for the Yankees. Blah 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 blah. So we'll see how all that goes. But Cohen's a pretty fair, down the middle guy. Yeah, he was with the Yankees for a number of seasons, but he was around some other teams. Again, he's a Kansas City guy. He's a Kansas City fan. He's very frank about that. So I got no problem with him calling it down the line. And Michael Kay, yes, of course, he's Mr. Yankee. But again, I think he's fair enough and professional enough to call the game down the line, not be too much of a homer. But I can understand if I'm like a Red Sox fan, for example, and these guys are calling the game, and like Dennis Eckersley's calling the game. Well, you're going to feel like there's a bias there. But, that's the way it is. We'll just see how it all works out. And staying with the Yankee family, unfortunately, there was a passing. Gerald Williams, the former outfielder for the Yankees, passing away at the age 55. Looks like he's been battling cancer recently. And if you may recall, in the early 90s, before the Yankees became, the Yankees with Joe Torre, it was kind of a spot starter, bench player. He was, kind of him and Bernie Williams are competing a lot. He was with the Yankees for a couple of seasons, from 92 up to 96. Now, he ended up getting traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, and now trade with Bob Wickman that bought back from the Brewers Ricky Bones, who was a starter, but the real gem in that trade was Graham Lloyd, who was just tremendous in the 96 World Series and would be part of that dominant Yankee bullpen of the late 90s. But Gerald Williams, just kind of a okay player, did make a big catch in that 1996 Doc Gooden no-hitter at Yankee Stadium. That was probably his biggest, I guess, Yankee moment, as you say. But he bounced around for about 14 seasons. Did come back for a cup of coffee in 2001, but was around for a month and the Yankees released him. So, just kind of sad to see a young guy. But at least, he was part of the 96 championship Yankee team, even though, again, he wasn't there for the end of it, but he was there for the beginning of it. And again, a great moment with Doc Gooden. And of course, now, again, he's gone at the age of 55. And I'm sure all Yankee fans are familiar with this play. It's the Jeter flip play. Well, unfortunately, also passing away has been the Jeremy Giambi, the younger brother of former Yankee Jason Giambi. Looks like a self-inflicted gunshot wound situation. We don't really know the details of it, but unfortunately, he's gone at the age of 47. And, as a play, kind of bounced around a little bit with Kansas City, the Phillies, Boston for a little bit. And not to throw dirt on, throw dirt on and besmirch him, but unfortunately is well known to be, a lot part of the whole Mitchell report, and supposedly testified that he, used and bought steroids, and actually was named by Victor Conte, the guy who ran the Balco thing, that he also sold steroids to Jeremy Giambi. So he's kind of known for that a little bit as well as being part of, again, being the younger brother of Jason Giambi. But so unfortunately he's gone as well. And just to go back to that flip play, just go back and, as how monumental that was. I mean, a lot of things just to surround that. It was about a month after 9/11. The Yankees are down 2-0, have to now go out to Oakland, and this seems very bleak. And in that game, you have Barry Zito versus Mike Mussina, and it was a pitcher's duel. And now the Yankees broke through early on with a Jorge Posada home run, made it 1-0 Yankees. And that would end up being the final score. The Yankees were able to hold it the whole way. Mussina goes 7, and then Mariano for 2 games to close it out. But of course, in the big flip play, now Shane Spencer was playing right field. Now normally that'd be Paul O'Neill, but since Barry Zito is a tough lefty, they put Shane Spencer out there, and he was just able to make that throw to Jeter in the infield. And of course, he makes the flip play to Posada just to nail Jeremy Giambi at the plate by like a whisker. Again, if Jeremy was just an inch quicker on that, probably beats the play. And this goes to show that maybe if O'Neill's out there, not that O'Neill's a bad fielder, but he could have had a bad throw or could have took a bad angle. Could have been a totally different situation. The game could have been tied 1-1, and perhaps the Yankees lose. So the Yankees win that game, go to win the next game 4 behind El Duque, then bring it back to game 5 at the stadium, and then finally complete the 3-2 comeback to knock Oakland out, and the Yankees will go on to play Seattle, buzz through them, get to the World Series, and unfortunately lose to the Arizona Diamondbacks. But just that play, that moment, with the Yankees back up against the wall, huge moment in Yankee history. Again, probably not good for Jeremy Giambi. I'm sure he wasn't happy, but Jeremy Giambi is part of Yankee history with that play. And just to piggyback on that Game 3, which was in the divisional series back in 2001, it was really the first time you could see a game clearly, as again, since a month, a little change earlier in 9/11, with the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers knocked down. Now for the New York broadcast feed, that's where a lot of television stations would broadcast the antenna from. Well, with that knocked down, it was somewhat compromised. So really, those first 2 home games, which were in New York, the screen was a little fuzzy. You really couldn't see it clearly. The only time we were able to see one of these playoff games clear was the Game 3, because then that moved out to Oakland. And of course, at least on the New York side, they were able to recalculate things just to get a clearer picture. So it was just kind of interesting. The first 2 games, the Yankees lose at home, and it's a fuzzy picture. So just the symbolism of that. And then once they get to Oakland and we were able to tune in on TV, you will finally get to see a clear picture. And of course, it almost like it woke up the Yankees, and they started being the Yankees again. And of course, would go on to win the next 3. So it's just kind of again, it's a very bizarre situation, with that. And of course, again, just go back to 2001. A lot of those crazy moments, and it's just unfortunate. The Yankees, it would have been really great if they could have gotten that 4th championship, but it just wasn't going to be the case. Now with Major League Baseball locked out, of course the Major League players can't use the official, team facilities and whatnot, and of course online, buying jerseys and stuff like that, like the players' faces are blurred out. All this weird stuff going on until they come together with an agreement. But of course for the minor league players, that's not the situation, because they're not considered Major League players yet, so they can use the facilities, and you're starting to see that. But now, interestingly enough, big story's been coming out now that the Major League clubs aren't paying these minor league players, because they feel, well, you're not exactly employees, and basically the way that the phrasing is that your training is the payment, which they value about $2,200 per week. So the situation now with these minor league players is that, well, they basically have to find ways to get money. So they have to get regular jobs, kind of like real old school baseball way back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, where a lot of players played the season and then, at the end of October, just threw their cleats in the closet and got out and got like regular jobs like any regular Joe. Well, starting to see that now with the minor league players, which is kind of interesting. So there's a lawsuit up there. It's going to go back and forth. Who knows like that? But for now on, at least until I get that solved. If you're in Tampa, maybe your next Uber driver is like, a Yankee catcher. Or if you go to Home Depot and you ask, hey, can you cut this pipe? It might be a Yankee future Yankee right fielder. So kind of crazy. And this is how this day and age, look, I know these guys make a lot of money, but you have these players practicing all day. I mean, it's a full-time job, more or less. Now you need them to sort of get some other income some way. So I'm sure some of them married and maybe the spouse could have some income come their way, but it's kind of ridiculous that you don't give them anything to live on. And you've seen a lot of situations where these players down there, again, they kind of have to go back to old school of sharing apartments, cramped apartments, stuff like that, and just finding ways to dig around to get money like that. And it could also be a dangerous situation. Just look, human temptations out there with different things, and maybe some of these minor league players get into some sort of illicit businesses and illicit things with gambling or maybe drugs, who knows, just to make a few bucks. So it's not really in baseball's best interest not to pay these people. I mean, look, you don't have to pay them a ton of salary, but just a living salary where they could at least pay the rent and get around and eat like that. Otherwise, you're just leaving them open to maybe, again, falling down a rabbit hole of just making some bad decisions to get money. So we'll see how it gets resolved. And again, the sooner, again, that baseball the Major League Baseball players can get together on an agreement and just get the money flowing in again, the better it'll be for everyone involved. And one of the Yankees' rival, the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, there was a proposal on the table of them possibly splitting the season, spending half the season up in Montreal, and then, of course, the season down in St. Pete Tropicana Field, which is an absolute dump. But, of course, the MLB Executive Committee completely knocked that idea down, which was good because it's just kind of insane to have a team having like 2 home fields. I mean, it's like if you have 2 fields, you don't really have a field. But it's just part of, Tampa's problem. They've been struggling for a number of years, try to get a new stadium, try to draw fans there. And it's just kind of a head scratcher because the team with, again, relatively little to no payroll is, competes pretty much every season. But for some reason, they just can't draw fans and just can't get enough revenue and can't get the government or whoever to put up money to build them a new stadium, which would probably help. But of course, MLB squashed that down. Now, it would have been cool a little bit just to, have some, for a Yankee fan, to have a road trip up to Montreal. And of course, they used to have the Montreal Expos back in the day. And, it would have been kind of a cool trip. Other than that, it just doesn't make sense to have a team play multiple ways. And it's just really weird that for whatever reason, I mean, Tampa, you got, I know Tom Brady just retired, but it was a title town that day. You got football, you got all this stuff, and they just can't get more than 10,000 people in the seats to see the Rays. It's just mind-boggling. So that's all the news and notes in Yankee land and across baseball. Hopefully the lockout is ending soon, so we can actually talk about actual on-the-field stuff. In the meantime, you're watching the show now, but if you want to catch future content, maybe you missed the show, you got the online stuff, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, as well as on Facebook, and check out the Section 420 Talkin Yankees page. Follow it. I've been seeing a lot of those coming in, so keep those coming in. And, of course, follow Instagram as well. Again, Section 420 Talkin Yankees. And last but not least, Twitter. Now, that's Section 420 TY Talkin Yankees. Get it? So Section 420 TY on Twitter. Follow us and catch future content.